This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from PeopleForward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self. Hey everyone, it is Rosie, and it is time for our quarterly installment of the Courageous Leadership series on the Show Up as a Leader podcast. And I love these conversations so much because we kind of flip the script or turn the tables, so to speak. So my dear friend, Nikki Lewallen Gregory from PeopleForward Network interviews me, and not even really interview. We just have a powwow conversation. Usually it becomes a bit of a coaching conversation and processing through things. And I just love these because there's such an organic time for us to chat about things that we're seeing and we've heard, and I hope you're getting a lot of value out of these. And so today we're really diving into 3 keys that are super, super critical and helpful when we are wanting to foster clarity and alignment, period, but especially amidst change. And so there's a lot of really good stuff in here, a lot of tangible stuff. There's a resource that we talked about that we are creating and that will be included as a download. So let us know what you think. And if there are other topics you want us to dive into on this series, let us know.
All right, so don't everyone be jealous, but yes, I get time back with Dr. Rosie Ward and her sparkle and shine and to learn. I love these episodes, and I always tell Rosie, I'm like, it's funny how the topics that we pick in advance that half the time Rosie doesn't even know until 5 minutes before we're here, and she just does her thing, right? We talk about them, but it's just, she's just being her and talking about real life, like this is what it is across, the scope of the clients I work with and my experiences, which just makes it authentic. I like that. So today we're talking about how to foster alignment and clarity on this Courageous Leadership series. And Rosie, I think I'd like to start with, what have you found most important if we were to say the top priorities to help humans align operating in a unified front together?
First of all, I love these episodes too. It's so fun. So thank you for the kind words. And yeah, I think as I think about alignment, I like to think about this also in the face of change, because we know that change is constant. And so there's kind of 3 things that always come to mind for me when we think about fostering alignment and clarity in the midst of change and in general. And the first is what we call build a lighthouse, which is one of our rehumanizing principles. But if you think about like what a lighthouse does, right? It cuts through the fog. It provides clarity for where ships need to go in dark and stormy waters. It can be like, oh, here's the destination. So it can provide that like energy and that vision, but it also is calming when like, okay. And so when we think about build a lighthouse, I will say on an organizational or team level, but also individual level, this is where we've got to know our why. We've got to know our values. We've got to have clear guiding principles that we use as a filter for how to show up. So on an organization level, Simon Sinek, start with why. We've got to know our purpose. But where most organizations go astray is they have not actually operationalized their values. Like, yes, we have our core values and their words on a website, but they have not really translated them into what does this value look like in action? And then go a step further and have deliberate practices and like wraparound systems that keep it at the forefront. So every day when I show up, every conversation, every situation, I kind of have this like, am I doing this, 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 and this? And am I being rewarded based on this, 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 and this of how I show up? And is my performance, evaluation and how we hire, like, is everything built around people being in alignment with that? So it's reinforced. And then like on an individual level, this is where doing work like the YOS discovery and knowing our Y operating system and also our core values, where I know, like you can't see it, but I have a list by my computer that's like, here's my 2 core values. These are the behaviors that tell me I'm in alignment. These are the behaviors that tell me I'm out of alignment. And so when I have to enter into difficult situations or even normal situations, it's like I ground myself and go, this is the version of me that I want to show up, because the crappy version also exists. But like, okay, be this version, this is what you need to do. And so I share all that because I think where the disconnect happens when we're trying to have alignment and clarity is either the lighthouse has not been established and has not been articulated and is not reinforced on a regular basis. But then the other thing is, even if the organization's lighthouse has been articulated, there's a step missing where we aren't actively reconnecting people to that lighthouse, where they see where they fit into the picture, where they emotionally feel connected to that lighthouse. And so I think if we don't have that emotional connection, we get caught up in swirl. So that's the biggest thing I think as a starting point, is that we have to have that lighthouse, and we have to be super, super deliberate about that.
I think some of our best conversations are when we can really illustrate this and see this visual, like you said, the lighthouse. And then you were talking about, I wrote down, like, do they feel it? And so I was just starting to think, okay, can the people that work with this team see where we're going? Do the people that work on this team feel the connection to the work, right? And I'm trying to think, is there like one more, I don't even know what you call these, but it's like this like reflection question, to see it, to feel, being part, that I feel that I know my role and that I feel excited about what we're doing, so that feeling state is there.
Something I would add, and this was just came up because I was having a conversation with a leader yesterday, so these are very timely, but, one of the ways, without using a tool like, YOS or something else, like how we actually go about, if you think about Simon Sinek's process, and we've done with clients, is we discover our why and even the how and some of that stuff through storytelling. And why I share that is that some of the most impactful questions that you can keep asking on an ongoing basis, but also can kick off the journey to clarify your lighthouse, is asking people what first brought you to this company, or what first brought you to this team. Because whether they're new or they've been there a long time, you're kind of tapping back into what was it. And some people might say, well, honestly, I just needed a job, et cetera. But then it's what keeps you coming back. And I think sometimes we don't think about that. Like, what is it that keeps you coming back? And then we can say, what are you most excited about? Where I'm going with that is, part of that helps you just tap back into the limbic brain, and taps back into the emotional connection that we all want to have with work. And then, if you've gone that step of, you have your lighthouse, you have your purpose, you have your values, what we do with our other clients that are further along is engage in regular storytelling of, when have you experienced our purpose or our why or our values or our lighthouse, whatever language you want to use? When have you experienced it in action recently? And what's the impact that has on you? And again, that's tapping into that. I feel connected, like, oh, I observed this happening, but here's what it did for me. It made me proud, or it made me, encouraged that when I'm in that spot, I know people are going to have my back, or whatever it is. And so one of the things that we always say is that storytelling process, so those reflective questions, but also engaging people in not just reflecting, but sharing a story around that reflection. Storytelling is what keeps that lighthouse illuminated on an ongoing basis.
And a lot of that is the feeling part. It's like stories help us connect, and then we can feel it. And then, also too, I learned from a dear mentor of mine that is an innovation storyteller, Susan Linder. She said, when you help others with the story, it becomes their story and how they want to tell the story. And it's just that's a true ripple of like, take it. And like, if you have an origin story, but you weren't there 20 years ago when the company started, but you get to tell the story from your angle. And it's just a really, really cool thing.
Well, and absolutely. And here's the thing, as human beings, we connect with other people, and we make sense of our experiences through story. That's how our brains work. We always say, like, in the absence of data, our brains fill it in with story, and usually not good stories, right? So, but that's how we make sense of stuff. And just from a connection and a process and a remembering standpoint, we could get into the whole logistics, but what we know from the data is that storytelling, or stories, are 22 times more powerful and impactful than facts and figures alone, which is why you have people that talk about, brand storytelling and know your employment brand, but it's all through story. And if you don't know how to articulate your story, and people don't see themselves in that story, to your point, whether they were around when the founder started or not, that's where we have to have some of these deliberate practices to help people start to see themselves inside that story. And that is a job for people who have formal leadership roles. Part of their job in being a steward of the culture is they have to deliberately create that space to reconnect people back to that story, back to that culture, back to that lighthouse, over and over and over. Like, that should be embedded in their daily leadership, or not maybe their daily, but their regular leadership practices.
Oh, that's so good. I thought I'd share really quick. I was pulling up some notes that I use on my computer whenever I'm talking with a new potential hire, and I try to revisit this regularly. And I just wrote it down. I'm like, revisit this today because I'm like, do as I say, not as I do, because I feel like I haven't revisited it in a little bit. So, but it's this kind of first understanding of really what matters to that person before even hiring them. And so what I do is describe your dream job and include as many descriptors as possible to bring it to life for me, like the whole thing. And then share at least one dream or big bucket list thing of yours. I just would like to hear, like, in your whole life, like, what is it that you're super excited about or want to do? And then we do this purpose gap matrix where they rank on a scale of 1 to 5. One is like not at all. And then 5 is like all the way. My work uses my abilities. The way I get to work, like my work experience, fulfills me. My rewards for my work are great. I feel capable in the work I am doing, and my work is advancing my career. So, like, with where you're at before coming into this, your experience right now, and then I have them say, what is a 5? And then we just reflect back, right? And we're always building toward that. But it's really fun. One of the books that changed my life that got me into this world of work is The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. I'm like, if the workplace can connect to like the dream, like this is a holistic thing. A human's way more than just what they're doing for work. And the dreams are, if the workplace is a path for that, man, you just keep getting back to that lighthouse. It's really powerful. Yeah.
I love that. So again, if we don't have that lighthouse and we don't have that clarity and we're not having those conversations from hire to, all throughout the employee life cycle, we're missing an opportunity. And so whenever people say, gosh, we're struggling with a new change or a new process, or we're struggling with alignment, or people aren't on the same page, I always go back to how strong is your lighthouse? And usually there's some cracks in the lighthouse, or the lighthouse hasn't been built, or they forgot about it, or you know what? They built it, but it's really not used. It's not turned on, and they're ignoring all the things that go against it, right? We're ignoring the fact that people are showing up in antithesis of our values, in the antithesis of our purpose, because we're short staffed, because, they're a good fill in the blank salespeople, whatever. There's a great video I showed for a client that's been around a long time, but Gary Vanderchuk, and he has a lot of expletives when he talks, but it was a clip of him talking, I think, with a bunch of tech CEOs. And he basically was like, you all need to go home and figure out which of your employees make the other employees miserable. And he's like, I don't care if they're your top effing salesperson. I don't care if they're your top effing whatever, right? They're a cancer that spreads. And so we always kind of go back to that of, we enable poor behavior when we don't truly anchor on that lighthouse, when it's a bumper sticker, it's words on a wall, but it's not a lived experience. So if you do nothing else but do that, you're going to be far better off in having alignment and clarity of where we're headed. It's all of those practices. And then I would say the subsequent with that, there's kind of two others that come to mind that aren't as robust, but they build off that lighthouse. And the second is a tool that I think I did a Rosie in my pocket on it. I'm pretty sure that I did, but it's a tool that I got out of our Dare to Lead curriculum that I use all the time with every single leader multiple times a week. And it's a tool that's called the 5 C's for fostering clarity and alignment around strategic decision making and delegation, et cetera. But I just say this is how you foster alignment, period. And it's basically either in your communication, so out to employees, to your customers, if you're a healthcare provider, to your patients, even in their treatment plan, whatnot, how you communicate what you do, your programs, but also in meetings, it's going through, okay, the first C is color. What are we trying to do? Right. So this is where it has to feed into the lighthouse. Like, what are we trying to do? What's the objective here? What's the priority level? Right. Does this now circumsede something else? And then here's the key. What does done look like? I cannot tell you how often things go astray around alignment and clarity because we did not get on the same page of what done actually looks like. And we've screwed up on our team. Like, oh my God, we forgot to align on done. And I'm like, damn it. Right. But that's such a big one because, or we'll go, we don't check for understanding. We go, are we good? Yep. But you're walking out of that conversation with two different understandings of done because you didn't actually paint done. So the color, we gotta, what are we trying to do? What's the priority level? Let's paint done. Then the second C is context, which is what are all of the other things that are within the organization, within the industry, within other departments, within the team itself that will either be impacted by this process, this decision, this project, this whatever, or that we will vice versa, right? What's going to impact us? Like, hey, this area is short staffed. Hey, this is going on right now. There's a new priority project over here. So we want to kind of look at the ins and outs. What's going to be impacted by it, but also what is this going to impact, right? People need to understand that bigger picture of, oh, okay, I get it. Then the third C is connective tissue. So how does this connect to other things that are happening? How does this lay the groundwork perhaps for something that has yet to come, right? It's future oriented, but we understand that connective tissue. The fourth is cost, and that certainly can be dollar. But for most people, when they think cost, they're thinking how much time, energy, attention, bandwidth is this going to take for me? And a lot of times I'm notorious for underestimating how much time something takes. So then that gets back to the paint done. Cause I'll say, like, to Lisa on my team, I'll be like, what, this is like 3 hours? And she's like, you're smoking crack. That's like a 3-week thing or something, right? So, but then we level set of, okay, well, then if that's the case, how do we reprioritize if this truly is the number one thing right now so that we can accommodate that it takes that amount of time? And then the last C is consequence. What's at stake? What's at stake if we don't do this well? What's at stake if we put this off? What's at stake if we don't get this right? Just to kind of help understand it. And so when we start to have those conversations, like, hey, can we just quick run through the 5 C's? Can we make sure we're on the same page? Then, you have people that are like, well, we have this project, but I don't kind of understand exactly why we're doing this, or this part doesn't make sense. Then you have a lot of that swirl and drama and stuff because people aren't clear because there wasn't that deliberate. So I would say you have the lighthouse, then you bring in something very tactical, practical as well, like the 5 C's, and have that be part of your meeting agendas. Have that be part of your communications and your emails. Have that be part of your one-on-one and team meetings of just running down and making sure, are we all aligned? Because again, if you don't know what done looks like, if you're not clear on how much time and effort it's going to take, if people don't know how it connects to other things, that's where everything falls apart.
That's so good. Is there like a worksheet for this or something, maybe either a link or a downloadable resource? Because I think that would be so helpful. I'd like it just as a tool to kind of glance at because it's a number of things that are all needed, but it just as a kind of cheat sheet. I love that.
Yeah, we totally, I mean, we have a handout that we always give in our programs and to our leaders. So yeah, well, we can happily include that. It's super simple, but it's like, oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then really the last thing, which is it's more of a concept, but it also does help influence kind of how we behave, is also it's not a Simon Sinek thing, but he has a really great video out on it. It's something you probably are familiar with, Nikki. It's been around in marketing for like, gosh, since the 70s or even past that, is something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And it's really understanding how does either change or how do new ideas or new products actually get adopted across a population, right? So when you think about if you're trying to move a process or an initiative across an organization or across your customer base or whatever it is, we have to understand how change actually happens. And so if you think about like a bell-shaped curve, right, that populations always get kind of put in that bell-shaped curve, and the front end, the first tail on the early end are your early adopters and your innovators, right? Those are the people that stand in line and already pre-order new Apple products, even if they don't even know what they're going to be like yet. Like they want to be on the front end, and those are going to be your people in your organization. Yep, sign me up. I'm a change maker. How can I be part of that? Yeah, let's go. Like they are always there, and they are the first to sign up for everything. But you don't reach a critical tipping point of massive change if those are the only people you engage, right? If you only get those people excited. And then you think about the middle chunk of the bell-shaped curve. On the front end, you have the early majority, and then on the back end, you have like the late majority. And then if you start to go to the back end of the tail, you have the laggards and the skeptics. And those are people, again, are a small percentage, but they're usually very loud. They're very, gnarly a lot of times, and they get a lot of attention because they're loud and gnarly. And here's what happens is so often, like when we're trying to do culture change or we're trying to roll out a new initiative or whatever it is, that people focus on that tail end of the laggards and skeptics of how do we get them on board? How do we reach the hard to reach? How do we get them? And that is the wrong place to put your energy and your attention because it's just going to suck you under. And so what we see, like with one of our clients, we work with their culture ambassadors, and we always keep bringing them back to that because the culture ambassador's role is to be a conduit of positive change, but they go back to their departments and they've got people all over the bell-shaped curve. And those laggards and skeptics are loud, and they can suck them under and have them start second guessing themselves and not want to do their role as an advocate for change, et cetera. And we're like, no, instead you focus on that front end and you build momentum and you start to bring along eventually by just consistency with practices and what you're doing and whatever, that FOMO kind of kicks in, the fear of missing out. And now all of a sudden you get, the early majority starts to come along. And maybe if you're lucky, you'll even get the late majority. Newsflash, you're never going to get those skeptics. And what we always say, going back to like Cy Wakeman's term of, you know what, if those skeptics are just kind of sitting back, that's one thing. But if they're staying and hating, that becomes, we have to manage them out the door type of a thing. And so I think if we go back to, you have your lighthouse and you have deliberate practices around your lighthouse, and that, which is an ongoing thing, right? Maybe even have a structure like the culture ambassadors and stuff to do that. That in your regular communication, you are deliberate about aligning on the 5 C's so people functionally know what they're supposed to do. And then when you're trying to move anything that's new or change that bumps people up against their humanity and all that kind of stuff, you remember that concept of the law of diffusion of innovation and put your energy where it matters. Those are the 3 things that in my mind are game changers that help you focus on the right things and not make it overwhelming. And is it going to be perfect? No, because we're talking about human beings and they're messy. But those are the things that I think can be super helpful when people are struggling, or even if you want to get to the next level of creating practices around those.
That's so good. Well, Salveo Partners and Dr. Rosie Ward just crush it on really bringing the enablement alongside us to make this simple. There's a lot of pieces, and these are people, humans, right? The most complex thing. Maybe there's a technology out there that's super complex that might compete with a human. But my point is, it's really complex, and we have to make it simple so that, across the board, all leaders are rowing in that same path, alignment leader wise, so that others are aligned and clear. So I think your work and so much that you have taught me and my team, just yeah, you make it simple, and you always keep it so uplifting and positive and bring that sparkle. I wrote down, as I was listening, some of the things that my team we do that I think are really important, and I think they go with this. They're like the activation of the how we do it. So I always like to say why, explain why we are doing something, going back to the many things you've shared. And we both are a fan of the YOS because it's a tool that helps us personally and then in our teams. But in our communication, here's why we're doing this change, or here's why we need to have this meeting. I mean, it's just always helping everyone to understand why in any capacity, let alone what is each person's.
Well, yeah, well, that's that color and context, right? It's like, here's what we're doing, here's how it fits into the lighthouse or the bigger picture. If you don't have that color or context, people are gonna, like, tune out. So I love that.
They're not going to be there, right? Like, it's like if someone invited me to something or asked me to be part of it, asked for my help, unless I understand it, why are we doing this? I'm not going to do it. So starting from there, I think is so powerful, with always making sure that you are bringing that to the table for anyone that you are working with. And then I'm wired from a win-win. I can't sleep at night if I feel like it's lopsided. And it's like in any form of humans, it's a partnership, whether it's a new hire or leaders that work together. And it's like, what's in it for them? Like, are you saying that? Or is it like your communication for your clarity is all about what you want to say? And I think it's just important, in what you were sharing, this is like one way that I think about, okay, what's in it for them? So I'm making sure that that's included. And then I constantly tell our team, did you over communicate that? Did you say it again? Send it again, forward it again. I am like one of the worst with email. Maybe I'm like in the middle, but like I'm not great at email. Just because they didn't respond to that one email, send it again, because most likely they would love the nudge, right? We're all trying to. I just read a stat yesterday. It's like we get, 2,265 emails on average. The average person does per day, or something crazy. I'm like, oh,
I believe it, because I will say, I'm like, and I've learned from Adam Grant, I don't say sorry for my reply. I'm like, thank you for your patience. But
you
it
taught me
is,
that.
yeah, but it can be so overwhelming. And what you're talking about is, Pat Lencioni, gosh, back in 2009 when he put out his book The Advantage and talks about organizational health, one of the steps of organizational health is we do have to over communicate clarity over and over and over. And I was just having this conversation with a leadership team earlier this week. And, they were like, well, we already said it once or twice. And I'm like, you are going to have to over communicate this way more than you think. Like, seriously, probably monthly. Like, this is not a 2 times and done or 3 times and done. And they are like, oh, and I'm like, people are scattered and people have a jillion things competing for their attention. You need to keep reminding them that as one of your jobs as a leader is remind them and reconnect them over and over and over.
And I'll just throw out a number for some people that are like, well, how many times exactly? I'm like, all right, let's start with 7. So make sure you put 7 out there and then keep going after that. You'll have it as a habit by then. And then, you were talking earlier about values in action and like the example of you could have this top performer that is crushing it and bringing in the dollars, right? But they are not living the values. And one of the greatest examples you could do is hold them accountable or say, hey, this just isn't working, man. You've crushed it from a skill, getting stuff done, but it's not our way of being. And, people will be like, wow, like when you really stand for your values in that way. And I think that the way that we can do that, that was a really loud example that's powerful for people to hear. You can't keep letting toxic things slide because then it just keeps sliding and everybody does it. So that's really powerful. But then everyday things, recognizing people on your team for the thing that you're working on and saying, oh my gosh, did you see what Chelsea did today? This is so fantastic. And you put a shout out there. So you're recognizing the behavior or whatever. And then other people are like, oh man, I need to step that up. Or they see the example. And then it's really celebrating that together and getting other people behind that. But yeah, I was just thinking about some of the things that we do in this, like how that shows up in our team. And I think, those things they're pretty great. I probably learned half of them from you.
Well, I'm not surprised, and I love that. And here's what I will add with that when you talk, I love the shout outs. And here's what I will just add as a caveat for anyone who's listening is 2 things. One is that whatever you have from a recognition program, recognition initiatives, process, et cetera, in your organization, it really needs to be anchored on that lighthouse and how are people embodying the message and embodying the values or whatever, not just results. That's a really, really critical part, especially to reinforce what you want. But the second is you also have to know how the people on your team want to be recognized, because for some people, a public shout out would be mortifying for them. They want the quiet conversation. They want the handwritten note, like their work love language. So I think it's super, super critical for people who are formal leaders, but I would even say peers, that we understand how one another what it takes for us to feel valued and appreciated, and that we honor that for each other because it's not the same for everybody.
Well, Rosie, these times always go so fast and just so chock full. And I love just the organic nature of them. I can't wait till the next one. And I really look forward to that resource that we'll link with this, just because I would love to have a copy of that and throw it up on my wall in my desk or in my office somewhere or something. So thank you again. Can't wait for the next topic. We'll have to figure out what that is. So, hey, listeners, if you have a topic, throw it out, send it to Rosie or send it to me. And yeah, we'll figure out what it is, but we'll continue to bring it and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, I love these. These are so fun for me selfishly. So yeah, thank you so much.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to PeopleForwardNetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.